Is there a disincentive for anyone basically going into the hybrid plan if you want to create generational income for the interest only pay option? For example, if you have the alternative plan and you have good amounts of savings, several millions of dollars, and you just want to live on the interest only and never touch the principal except for what you have to have that automatically comes to you at age 70 and define the payout. There's no options to do that under hybrid, or do you basically just make any alternate for that reason? And if you do that, is that basically interest payment that's coming to you on a monthly basis without touching the principal? Is that regarded as a biweekly payment? And how does that relate to your health care? Does that mean that you have a health care or not?
Let me start with the last question first. So under the circumstances that you're setting up, you're going to retire, you're going to have a whole bunch of cash in your name. You need to make sure that some of that cash is always coming as a periodic monthly payment.
Like an annuity.
Like an annuity, and that'll protect your retiree health care. The question is, for someone like that, does it make sense to switch? Well, what you're doing if you're switching to the hybrid is you're saying, I'm taking all this money, it's no longer going to be mine to invest, and I'm not going to any longer be subject to how it does in investments. I'm going to get a guarantee that all this money is going to earn 4% interest until I retire. The money you move over isn't going to get matched, obviously. But then from then on, anything you put in is going to get matched. So, for someone in that circumstance, it's essentially the equivalent of saying it's an investment. Is this the best investment vehicle? Guaranteed 4%. But just remember, you're not going to be able to move over more money than it took to buy your past service. If someone's got $2 million, that's a lot of past service. So probably they could only, maybe they can only move $500,000 of it to buy past service. The other $1.5 million is going to have to stay in the ARP no matter what. You can't buy 100 years of past service. Yes?
So, is there no copay if you just go to SERS from ARP? If you totally switch, or, you leave some money in ARP, but if I decide, okay, I'm going to take some money from ARP, I'm going to buy 10 years of past service, and from now on I'm going to be in SERS. Do I have to pay anything out of my salary every month to be in SERS?
Okay, so you mean pension contribution, employee pension contribution.
Yeah.
The employee pension contribution depends upon what
I was hired in
you chose.
1992.
So in 1992, that would make you the equivalent of Tier 2.
Right.
So there is no, in true Tier 2, there is no employee contribution. In the hybrid, there is a 3% plus the 2% that goes into the ARP. If you were to do the straight SERS, and if the IRS allows it,
which we don't know yet.
Which we don't know yet. You could then, it would be a zero contribution. I just want to put one little sort of twist on that. It is possible that the IRS could say, we're going to allow the SAG award, but for those people who would be paying 0, they're still going to have to pay 5. Because from what we're learning, it looks like you can't reduce your, okay, it's possible they could say that. We have a different set of arguments on the SAG award because it's about undoing a past wrong. But it's possible they'd say you have to pay the 5, in which case you would have the 5%, which would all go into your ARP, but you'd still be in the SERS plan. That is one possible result of what the IRS could say next year or the year after.
And then when you calculate what your salary is to do the table, what do you include? I mean, some of us teach in summer, some summers and not others. Is that counted part of your income that year? Some of us might have a grant one year that we get a small stipend from. Is that part of our salary that year? How do you know what to put in?
The default position begins with the notion that whatever you earn from the institution is your final average salary. However, if you think that there's something idiosyncratic and unfair about that, then you would bring it to Steve's attention and we would look at that. The examples that were given when we were talking about the SAG award. In general, summer teaching, they're going to include that because, frankly, when you retire, you could also be teaching in the summers, right? Mm-hmm. So it could easily be part of your final average earnings. But we had someone who said, look, I'm interim dean. So I've got, I've taken that temporary demotion to dean. Oh, never mind. I've taken that. I think I made that joke last time, too.
Went over just as good.
Yeah. I actually stole it. Thurgood Marshall actually spoke at my law school graduation, and he actually made that joke. So I stole it from him. He's way funny. He was way funny.
No, it's more.
But anyway, so the what was I talking about?
Oh, it's just not including temporary when you
Right. Yeah.
Summer school.
So you're temporarily dean. There's no reason to think you're going to be dean when you retire. So that would be an example where they would say, well, if you got a $3,000 temporary increase or whatever, you shouldn't count that. So in general, you count everything, but if there's something that seems like you have a good argument that, no, there's no way I would be doing this when I retire, you should talk to Steve about that. Well, purchasing purposes right now, you wish your salary was really low, because your salary, the higher your salary, the more it costs to purchase that service.
Okay.
So, yeah, yes.
Steve, well, Steve was next to number.
Just be clear about this. I know you went over this before, but about the pre-retirement death benefit under CERS.
Yes.
So if purchasing 15 years, those purchasing of years does not count as being vested in that, or?
Yeah, and, well, I confuse things by using the word vested. Okay. For purposes of CERS, you're vested, all current employees are vested after 5 years. New employees, it's a 10-year vesting, but for all of you, it would be 5 years. So your money would be vested. The question is, what do you get out of it if you were to pass away before you're retirement eligible? And the answer to that is that all you get out of it is you get your contributions back plus a small amount of interest, which is a pretty...
So that would include, say, people that are 50 years old now who have been paying in for 15 years? That's
Correct.
the same?
It's the same. Now, for them, what their contributions are is simple, right? If they're in Tier 2, their contributions are 0. If they're in Tier 2A, they were 2%. For people who've always been in CERS, it's very simple. For you all, if you're buying in those 15 years, the question is, will they treat those all that money you put in as your contributions? And what they've said is, no, we're going to only treat 5/13 as your contributions because the other 8/13 came from the state. They didn't pay 8%. So that's the little thing that you need to, if you were in, that's not a problem with the hybrid. With a hybrid, all that money is yours instantly. So if you, or your spouse's if you were to pass away before you're retirement eligible, so you're getting credit for all 13/13. Which again, my math is good enough to know that's way higher than 5/13. So that is one of the advantages of the hybrid.
Is that the case if you use money from 403B?
No, if it was money that was not employer matched to begin with, then that's your money.
So
You don't lose that.
He'll give us back the whole,
Right.
the whole amount.
Right. There was, you said.
Yeah, well, this gentleman here and then Rachel. Yeah.
If I understand correctly, when you say vested, means that you need to be there 5 years, you need to have 5 years of past service before you can benefit from the CERS?
From the CERS aspect as compared to the hybrid aspect, that's right.
It's five years.
It is 5 years. It's really a deceptive figure because if you, for a typical person, a 6-year pension is a pretty low number. But yeah, you'll get a 6-year pension if you retire with 6 years. I haven't covered the whole basics of how a defined benefit plan works because a lot of you already heard all that with the SAG award and I don't want to go through it again. But basically, your years of service is a multiplier. So if you've got 10 years of service as compared to 20 years of service, your pension is going to be twice as high after 20 years, right? It's simple multiplication. For people, the defined benefit plan is uses a multiplier that's designed to provide a decent pension after like 30 years of service. Typical multiplier for Tier 2 is about 1.5% per year of service. So if you've been here 30 years, then you just take 1.5% times 30 years, that's going to tell you what percent of your final average salary you're going to get. But if you've been here 6 years, 1.5% multiplier times 6 is a pretty small number. So you're going to get a pretty small pension. Does that make sense? So yeah, it's vested, but it's not much.
Rachel.
I just had a question in terms of the death, whatever it's called, the non-benefit.
Pre-retirement death benefit?
Yeah, yes, yeah. If you're not married and you have children, let's say, do they get maybe them?
Yes. Yes.
So that doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be spouse. Because
For health insurance, it has to be your spouse or your actual kids.
Or
depending on
my kids.
your kids, right? But for your pension aspect, you could have designated anybody.
Yeah, and then once you're in.
I can give you my address if you don't have. No.
Once you're in Sears.
Yes.
You know, whether it's the hybrid plan or whether it's Sears, and you're in the same boat, you're not married, but you have kids. there is an option where you can choose some reduced amount that they could get for 10 years. It's different, and that's still true. That's true with the hybrid as well as.
Yes,
Okay.
all the rules of SERS apply to the hybrid except that special withdrawal option.
Those
which
are
is in the hybrid.
payout options.
Yeah, all the payout options apply. Yes.
If you wait for the IRS's decision on SERS and it doesn't come back favorable that you can't join, can you go into the hybrid at that point?
You'll have 90 days after the IRS rules. You'll have 90 days.
The downside to waiting, again, is just that what your salary may be higher. Is that one of the implications?
Yeah,
I'm
I
just
mean,
wondering whether it just makes sense to wait.
Here's everything that happens between now and when the IRS rules could be a downside or it could be an upside, right? Your salary could be higher, which in that weird moment is a downside because your purchase cost would be higher. Although in general, you want your salary higher. You could, you know, your money now is in your ARP account, depending on how you're investing it. You could have a lot more money in a year or two, or you could have a lot less. But all those, whatever happens in the next year is potentially an upside or a downside. So I'm not advising people to hurry up and make this decision. It depends on every individual circumstance. What I did say was, if you really know you're going to retire next month, or that's really what you want to do, then there's no reason to wait, because the only downside of the hybrid is that 3% contribution, and 3% for a month or a few months is a pretty small amount of money. So you don't need to make a life decision to keep working longer than you otherwise were going to do, or to retire and not touch your ARP money and wait until the IRS rules. You don't need to make that life decision just to find out whether the SAG award works or not, because the hybrid's just as good for you. Yes.
What happens if the IRS rules no?
On the SAG award, then your only option will be the hybrid, or to stay where you are.
Just so I can get clear, if you have enough money to buy in for all the time you've worked here, can you choose to buy in for less than that amount of time?
Yes.
And keep the rest of the money in your ARP account? And also, for the death benefits, if I have my son, how long would he keep getting those benefits?
Are you talking about
And if I die?
There's a payout option upon your retirement, and I think for kids, as far as I know, you could actually put your kid on a full payout option. It's just that you would pay your pension would be so much smaller because your kid is so much younger than you. So the retiree health care option, your retiree health care won't cover your kid beyond age 26. So nothing you can do about that. Yeah.
If we choose the hybrid now, does that preclude us from going into SERS after the decision?
You should assume the answer to that is yes. We don't know for certain. Is it possible the IRS could say, look, because you didn't know that you had this option, we're not going to hold your choice of the hybrid against you? But we're pretty concerned that the IRS may say, look, you made a one-time irrevocable choice. You knew you had the choice to wait for the SAG award to come out. You chose not to wait. So why would we give you a chance for a duel? So, I don't know that. I don't work for the IRS. But if it were me, if I were making that decision, I would make the decision on the assumption I'm not going to be able to change later.
Steve?
This is not so much my question, but it's a question that I get from colleagues, perhaps more than anything else, which is the sense of uncertainty of whether or not the state will continue to fund the pension, and the rate of underfunding inside of the pension, making people feel vulnerable about turning over $200,000 or something to the state.
Well, so in case everybody couldn't hear, the question is about, will the state continue funding the pension plan? It's grossly underfunded. If I'm switching into SERS or the hybrid, am I making a bad choice? There are a couple things that are important about this. The obligation to pay pension benefits is an obligation of the state of Connecticut, not of the pension fund. So theoretically, for years, in fact, there was almost no money in the fund when, before there was collective bargaining, General Assembly wasn't really pre-funding the plan. So it was simply a promise, a contractual promise binding on the state of Connecticut to pay you a certain amount of money when you retire. So that that promise binds the state in terms of getting out of, states don't even have access to bankruptcy court. No state has ever failed to pay retirement benefits. I mean, is it, the world could end, but it's an extreme, that's what it would take in terms of money that's already owed, benefits that are already owed for the state not to pay them is completely unheard of. There's a second